Hello, hello, and welcome to Shit You Wished You Would Have Learned in Grad School. I'm your host, Jennifer Agee, licensed clinical professional counselor. And today I am here with Kieran McMonagle. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist in California and Washington. He is the founder and owner of Red Cape Therapy, LLC, and he specializes in working with clinicians to make their practices more trans and queer affirming in addition to working with clients. So, welcome, Kieran.
Thank you.
I invited Kieran on today because I wanted to talk about gender. And there is so much that is not discussed in grad school. And I'm going to age myself. I graduated in 1999. Okay, so I've been around a hot minute. And I will tell you that when I was in grad school, we had a human sexuality class. I learned about BDSM stuff, female genital mutilation. I mean, things that sometimes come up, sometimes don't, but they didn't say jack squat about gender. And Kieran and I met one another in Ireland at a training and got to talking. And I thought you would be a perfect resource for people just to start to expand their awareness of what they don't know that they don't know. So I just want to
Absolutely.
introduce the topic to Kieran and let's have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just listening to you, Jennifer, like the first thing I was thinking about was like, okay, you graduated in 1999 and had a human sexuality class. I graduated in 2013 and all I had was a human sexuality class,
So not a
where
lot's changed.
not a lot has changed, right? There wasn't a class specifically around gender. And gender and sexuality are two separate things. The only reason they're really connected is because in the English language that I use, we use the words to talk about each other, right? But gender and sexuality are different topics. And so I'm excited to be here and talking to you about all of it.
Okay,
I had
so
this
take a minute
moment.
before
Oh,
we go.
yeah.
Hang on, take a minute before we go. Tell us the difference between gender and sexuality. I want to make this podcast so
Totally.
super clear that people walk away feeling like they really learned and they elevated their knowledge base.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, everyone has a gender and everyone has a sexuality. Gender is your experience of who you are and how you experience yourself. And often ways we're taught what our gender is instead of really sitting down and deeply exploring, like, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be non-binary? How do I experience that within ourselves? So we have the internal experience of gender, and then we also have our gender presentation, which is how we show the world our gender. And our gender presentation may match our internal sense of gender, and it may not, and that's okay. And our sexuality is who we do or do not want to do the do with. There's also romantic identity, which is who we want to be romantic with. May match your sexuality, may not. And that's okay. And again, we all have a gender, we all have a sexuality, and we all have a romantic identity.
Perfect. All right, now we've got a good foundation. Let's go from there.
Perfect. One thing I was thinking about is I was preparing for this podcast. I was laughing to myself because I thought it was shit we didn't learn in grad school. And then I sat down today and it was shit I wished we learned in grad school.
Yeah.
And that kind of hit me in a different way where I was like, wow, like what did I wish I learned? Because there's so much I didn't learn or so much that wasn't taught. But what I wish I learned, like just fundamentally, was that like it's okay to be trans. It's
Mm.
okay to be exploring that for yourself. And it's okay to be in a process of not knowing or learning more. Um, and just really sitting with like, it's okay to be me.
Yeah, and it's okay to recognize that in all areas of our life, sometimes we're on a journey of
Yeah.
exploration and learning and growing and understanding.
Absolutely. Sometimes parents will come to me and be like, is it a phase? Is it a phase? And I just break it down to like, there's so many phases in our life. Like your kid is in this space where they're coming to you and they're saying, this is my gender. And the most important thing for us to do as parents is to let our kids know that we love them no matter what. So if they're
Mm.
coming to you and they're saying, like, I want to use these pronouns, I want to use this name, it's one, amazing because they trust you to come to you. They
Mm.
trust you that you're going to see them and love them no matter what. And they're asking you to love them in a certain way. So really by using name and pronouns, we're telling our kids like we love you, we see you, and we respect you for where you're at now. May that shift and change? I don't know. I've been through many different phases of shifting and changing and exploration of my gender. And it's those people that loved me throughout the whole journey that really stuck with me.
Yeah. All humans are seeking the love and acceptance of our people, like our parents,
Yeah.
our primary friend group, and it's important that everyone has access to that, and certainly hope everyone does, and I know that's not always the case. So tell me a little bit about what I know that you work with therapists to help make their practices more trans and queer affirming. What are some of the things that you want therapists to know or understand?
Mm. That's a good question. I think I really start with that everyone has a gender and a sexuality. And you'll hear me say that a lot because I think sometimes we think, oh, this is a trans people thing. This is a queer people thing. When really this is a people thing. Like we all have an experience of gender and sexuality. So when I start my trainings, often I sit down and I work with people around like, how do you experience gender? What does that mean for you? And it really kind of opens people up to understanding gender as this like social contract construct that we've been taught, and how do we fit into it as humans. And so I encourage everyone to be doing their work around like, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? How do you experience your gender? How do you want to experience your gender? How do you experience gender euphoria? What are the ways that you're feeling really in your body, really stoked about your gender? Um, so I always start there. And then, things that are really, really important for me are I believe that all therapists need to be trans affirming. It is suicide prevention. Trans people have a higher rate of suicide, which is awful and devastating. And a lot of it is because of transphobia and the way that we're taught that we're not okay in this world. And so, as part of suicide prevention, I believe that all therapists need to be doing this work in order to create their practices to be trans affirming, especially if you're working with adolescents, because kids will come to you and you don't know if they're trans. They may or may not come out later. We don't know. And
Mhm.
I've talked to so many therapists where like they got this kid when the kid was 5 or 6, and now the kid's like 10 or 11 and is coming out, and they're like, I have this great relationship with them. What do I do? And I'm like, this is a great reason to do the work. And like, um, to not just like when a person comes out as trans, not have your first reaction be like, oh, I need to give them to a gender specialist. Like, this is why we all need to be doing this work and exploring this so that when the kid comes out, you're like, awesome. And you can celebrate it instead of the kid feeling like it's a burden or something that someone doesn't understand.
I think that's an excellent point because although not all of us are going to be specialists in gender or
Absolutely.
transition or a thousand other different issues,
Hmm.
we can be educated to the point that if we have a well established relationship with the client,
Yeah.
we can help walk with them through it. That doesn't mean we won't
Hmm.
connect them to resources that
Of
maybe
course.
have a better skill set or increased knowledge around the area, but we
Hmm.
don't have to leave or exit stage left either.
Yeah, there's also a really good opportunity because not all parents are going to choose me to be their kids' therapists,
Mhm.
especially if they're more scared, more nervous, more unsure, um, might be experiencing more discomfort. Like they might seek out a therapist that they um, are making assumptions might direct a client in a certain way, right? So it's important that we can all be affirming so that when parents bring their kids, we can help coach the parents in how to support their trans kids.
Mhm. Perfect. One of the things that I have heard from parents almost always, so not
Hmm.
always, but like a 98% of the time when they come in and there is starting to become questions of what it,
Hmm.
am I trans? Am I gay? Am I, like what's happening in my
Yeah.
brain and body and where do
Yep.
I want to settle here? Parents almost inevitably bring up some form of, is this a phase?
Hmm.
And are they just doing this because that's the group at school that will accept
Hmm.
them? I hear that a
Hmm.
lot. So I'd love
Hmm.
for you to talk a little bit about that and how therapists can address that with parents in a way that honors the child and or whoever is in front of you that honors them
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and also helps them to become culturally competent.
Totally. So, yes, I hear those all the time as well. And I've done a lot of thinking on it and a lot of kind of working with different parents and trying things that work and that don't work. The first thing that I think is so important if you're working with a trans kid specifically, someone under the age of 18, is parent coaching sessions, because parents are allowed to have their process around their kid coming out. And often I see parents trying to have that process with their kid, and that's just not the developmentally appropriate way to have that conversation.
Right.
So parents need a place to have this process, and us as therapists are the perfect place for them to have this conversation. So I always tell parents, like don't worry what you say, don't be afraid to say something wrong. That's okay. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help coach you in this process, because you as a parent get to have this process and this grief and whatever's coming up for you. But what you don't get to do is have that in front of your kid, or put it on your kid, or tell your kid they're not okay as they are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like step one. And then really coming down and breaking down to kind of what I was talking to earlier around, like, is it a phase? Is it something they're doing for their friends at school? I always say, like, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that this kid trusts you so much to come to you. You're obviously killing it as a parent, and they're coming to you and trusting you and saying this. So the best thing for us to do is to sit with them in that process as they discover more about themselves, right? So I always say, like, things might change or shift. Like, I've seen clients come out, like for myself, I came out as non-binary. I was non-binary for many years. And I went to a point where I really wanted to transition to using he, him pronouns and having more of a binary identity. And there was a process in that. And people watched me through the years doing that. And that's okay. That's not saying that my non-binary identity wasn't real and affirming. It was. I was in it, and that was who I was. And as I got more comfortable with myself and more comfortable with this idea of being gender expansive in a lot of ways, I was able to step into this place more where I wanted to medically transition, which was not always the truth for me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. And all of those experiences are valid in that process. So, really, just coming and being in the moment and having those mindful moments of being affirming to the kid as they are, and as it changes, celebrating it and being like, cool, you're learning more about yourself. This is awesome. Because us as, like, I mean, as adults, as caregivers, we want to see young people grow and thrive. I always say, I saw this as a meme somewhere, but my only trans agenda is to help trans kids become trans adults,
Mm-hmm.
because some of us don't make it, and that's
Yeah.
devastating.
Mm-hmm. I love that you're talking about this as a journey as well, and opening parents up to, you don't have to be afraid. It's
Hmm.
okay to sit in this space with, with your loved one or your kiddo that's
Yeah.
coming to you, and be on the journey with them. You don't have to know where the end result is going to land, because that's going to shift and change and evolve. Just like, even though I'm a she, her, my gender and my sexuality match, like all the like very textbooky things, in the
Hmm.
world, who I am as a woman has changed and evolved in different aspects of that.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I present much more masculine in different
Hmm.
areas of my life. Or like, all of this gets to be a
Yeah.
journey, and it should not be in a strict box. Not
Yep.
because none of us want to live that way.
Absolutely. And that's why I say, like, having these conversations about how people are expanding trans identity helps cis people too, because it breaks down those boxes of, like, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, and what those expectations are.
Hmm. Yeah, and people should get to define what that is for themselves.
Absolutely.
Mhm. So in talking about gender, are there any tools that you use that are helpful to either clinicians when you're coaching them, or to parents in explaining, or to your clients in explaining gender? I'd love to hear any tools or tips or tricks that you have.
Yeah. I mean, I think my biggest tool, tip, trick is building relationships. I believe that relationships are everything, especially when we're trying to learn. So, from the therapist piece, like, if you're feeling uncomfortable when we're talking about this, that's awesome, because we grow from a place of uncomfort. Like, if I was comfortable all the time, well, I was uncomfortable, and that's how I learned about being trans, because I was like, what's going on? I need to learn about something. So we grow from a place of discomfort. So I always encourage therapists, if they're feeling uncomfortable, if they're feeling scared, if they're unsure, that's awesome. That's the place that we want to be when we learn. Um, and so there's, like, vulnerability in that. There's understanding that, like, this stuff wasn't taught in grad school, and, like, I didn't learn about gender or gender expansiveness or transness growing up. This is something I had to learn when it became a life or death situation for myself. Um, so being willing, being vulnerable, and being excited, I think also about expanding your practice in this way. So that's kind of like my tips and tricks for clinicians. Curiosity,
Mm.
when it comes to working with kids, I think the biggest thing really is being like very authentically yourself. I like showing up as you in the room. That's something that I wished we learned in grad school. Like you had said, like one of the things I wrote down was like authenticity, like just knowing that I can be trans and in the room, and my transness can be in the room, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when I'm working with kids, I was doing a consult the other day and I was kind of giving some ideas on things that I would say. And the clinician was like, "You're irreverent." And I was like, "Yes, because that's how we build connection and that's how we build playfulness." And so often young people are taught that their transness is a burden to adults. So I try and be the contradiction to that, to be like, how can I celebrate this with you and be excited about who you are and learn more about your process?
You
Does that
just
answer your
said it really,
question?
yeah,
Oh,
it
go.
answered my question. You just said something really powerful, which is um, that the kids often see their transness as being a burden to
Oh,
adults.
absolutely. So I sat with this one trans kid and I just said something that I felt was a little basic that was like, "I'm excited that you're trans," or "I'm excited that you're here." Like something about I'm excited about their gender and their experience or their journey or the process that they're on. And the kid just looked at me and said, and just like tears were coming down their eyes. And I was like, "I'm curious what's going on for you." And they're like, "Nobody has ever told me that they were excited I was trans. It always just feels like a burden and something that adults need to figure out. Adults
Mm,
need to learn more. It's never something that we get to celebrate."
yeah, because you can celebrate and also be learning more at the same time.
Absolutely.
Those things are not exclusive.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And it also comes back to like the learning piece for the parents, for the therapists, all of that I believe should be done outside of where kids can see it, because we need to be celebrating them and helping them feel joy about their experience and learning more about themselves. And then we're talking and consulting with other trans therapists. We're talking to people with lived experience, paying them to do that, and learning from other people. Like, "I've never used they, them pronouns before. Can you help me?" Yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. Let me coach you through that.
I'll tell you what, I'm full transparency. This shit was shiitake mushrooms. If I can't say shit on podcasts, I don't know. But this was never a thing for me growing up, right? They, them, and
Totally.
all this
Me
stuff.
too.
And I mean, it does your head in. Like when you're
Hmm.
trying to switch everything I've known for 40
Hmm.
plus years, like, um,
Hmm.
but we're humans are flexible and adaptable. We can
Yeah,
certainly do it. Doesn't mean we make mistakes along the way, but it is
totally.
something that it's like building a new muscle. It's
Uh-huh.
incorporating new language that was new. But I've incorporated plenty of slang over the years that wasn't around when I was a kid. Like we can do that. It's
Exactly.
it's not an undoable kind of a thing.
I always say that it's like about intention, it's about mindfulness, and it's also about noticing how we use they, them pronouns for singular people all the time. We just do it without intention and mindfulness. So, like examples, if there's a post person dropping off my mail, I might say, like, "they dropped off my mail." And I might not even notice I'm using they, them pronouns for a singular person. And so we do it all the time. And
Good
it's about
point.
practicing and just being mindful and just putting it into our language in a way that gets to support people. And if we don't fully understand it, that's okay, because that person over there feels loved and supported. And how awesome is that?
Yeah, pretty flippin' awesome, I would say. Pretty flippin'
Totally.
awesome. Um, so one of the things as you were talking, I was thinking of, okay, what can we do to make the experience of being able to bring gender and sexuality into the therapeutic process? Let's say I do not specialize in working with queer and trans clients, but
Hmm.
yet I have had clients who are both, we're
Hmm.
and poly and all sorts of other things. I don't
Hmm.
necessarily have a huge specialty in, but sometimes those clients come to you. What can I do as just a Gen Poppy therapist to make my
hmm.
practice a little more
Hmm.
open and affirming and open those doors for conversation? And I was thinking a
Hmm.
lot of it starts with your website and intake.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So the first thing I would do is I recommend everyone hire therapist of trans experience who is willing to do some consultation work with you. So that's first. I think all therapists should work towards that. I also think it has to do with website and intake. Um, I mean, there's little things. So I always say that your behavior has to match your signage, right? So like if I walk into a website that's of somebody that I may or may not know, I know that's not in our community, and they have like flags everywhere and they're like, it's a safe space, it's a safe space. My red flags are going off right away because one, I don't believe safe space exists because of racism, cultural homophobia, transphobia. We can work to make space safer, but I
Mhm.
don't think that every place can be safe for every person. And I think that often people will put the signage out without really doing that internal work on our behavior. So it's how we're talking about things. It's where we're, like sometimes people will put like, I serve men and women, right? And so like to me, I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? What does a man mean to you? What does a woman mean to you? So really being curious and um, intentional about your language on your website,
Mhm.
and also speaking to what you can and cannot do. I had somebody go through a therapist who said that she works with all transitions, and it became apparent that she didn't work with gender transitions, and there was a trans client seeing her, um, and I ended up kind of working with her to take some space and do some training around what that meant, and what that meant around having that on our website. So just being like understanding that if you say like I work with transition, like a queer person might read that in a certain way. Uh,
Right.
so being able to speak to that. When it comes to intake forms, I'm a big fan of just like leaving blank spaces for things, making sure there's a blank space for people's pronouns. People used to ask me like what check boxes to put, and there's just so many check boxes. It can be hard to make sure you're covering all of them. So I like blank spaces. I've also been given feedback by some queer trans folks that they really like having check boxes because they finally have check boxes that exist for them. So
Sure.
that's a really good example about how things people can have different opinions on things in
Mhm.
community. Does that answer your question? Is there anything you want to speak to more?
No, that does answer my question, because bringing into the room from the beginning, even asking the client if it's not on the intake or you've got them and they hadn't filled it out yet, just
Mm-hmm,
asking the simple questions: what pronouns would you prefer at the
mm-hmm,
beginning of session
mm-hmm.
will open the door for letting them know
Yeah.
that you are open to having those conversations as well.
Yeah. Two things. One, I never ask about preferred pronouns because pronouns aren't a preference, they're pronouns. Everyone has pronouns. We all use them. So leading by example too and being like, hi, my name's Kieran. I use he, him pronouns. What about you? How do you introduce yourself? So
Okay.
that we're making sure, especially if you're like a cisgender identified therapist, that you're not just being like, oh, that person's gender I don't understand. Let me ask them their pronouns. Or I know that person's trans. Let me ask them their pronouns. We should be asking everyone pronouns so that it becomes this normal thing that we're talking about all the time. And then again, making sure that your behavior matches your signage, because I do see sometimes that people put their pronouns in their email and think that that's enough, and that's not enough. There's work to be done around really deconstructing our ideas of gender and how we show up in the therapy room, and ongoing work that we should be doing with therapists of lived experience.
Therapists of lived experience. I think that's um, really powerful. Is there a great way that you know of, or is there a community that this therapist like myself like could connect with to be able to find people in our area? Is there a website or something like that, or do you need to create that?
So in general, I'm a part of a couple different. I love Facebook for
Yeah.
therapist networking. It's
Hmm.
how I met, Jennifer. It's how I met Patrick from the different retreats I've been on. It's like I think it's just a great tool for therapist networking. So there's a
Hmm.
couple different therapist groups for LGBTQ and trans affirming therapists. That's the name of one, and that's a great place. There's a lot of trans identified therapists as well as trans affirming therapists in
Hmm.
that group. So that's a great way to connect. Also, asking in bigger therapist groups like who has lived experience, I want consultation. I'm available for consultation. I'm also available to give other people's names. I know a lot of different therapists. Then there's also outside of therapist world, there's some really great trans educators that don't necessarily speak to the clinical piece, but speak to what it means to be trans in general. And I have a lot of good referrals for folks there too.
Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I know some people might listen to this and recognize that there are deficiencies in how
Mhm,
their education or their knowledge
mhm,
base, or even
mhm.
just the practical side of what their forms look like and their website and things like that. So
Absolutely.
connecting them to good resources, I think, is important. Um, as we're starting to wrap up, what are some things that you wish therapists knew or understood better about gender? Because I know that's
Mm,
the primary purpose of our talk
mhm.
here today.
I really think that something that's really important is that like you can do this too, right? This isn't something that only trans therapists can do. I envision a world where like all trans therapists have like cohorts of cis therapists that they're working with and teaching so that we can affect more and more trans kids in the world, the United States. I mean, there's so many kids out there that are struggling. There's so much legislation that's telling these kids they do not have the right to exist. And that's just devastating. I want therapists to really understand that being trans affirming is suicide prevention. Being trans affirming and open and loving is suicide prevention. And there's not some secret thing that I do. I'm just exploring and loving and being authentically myself in a space with other trans people. And um, that's the space that's healing. And anyone can do it. We can do it. And the more that we move towards like affirming and learning more and learning why we do certain things, the more we're just supporting the community as a whole.
I love that. And I just want
Yeah.
to encourage, especially if any of my other fellow old timer therapists are out there, even though we didn't necessarily grow up with the language around this, that doesn't mean that we're not allowed to evolve and grow too. That
Yeah.
being out of our comfort zone, expanding our knowledge base, sitting with the discomfort of not understanding sometimes is powerful. And if you're
Yeah.
going to be a therapist in today's world, you had better start figuring this stuff out because
Yep.
people are more open about it. It's being discussed in groups everywhere, online with your clients. And it's okay to not know the answers, but it's not okay to not start to do the work to figure it out.
Mm, I love that, Jennifer. It's true.
Mm-hmm. I think
It's
so.
not like, I always say I wasn't taught this growing up. I grew up super conservative Catholic, and this is stuff I had to learn too.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Okay, how can
Mhm.
people connect with you, Kieran?
Great question. So my name is Kieran McMonagle. I have a website, redcapetherapy.com. It is not because I believe I'm a superhero. It's from a poem I love by A. Gibson, which is a line that says, I've never met a heavy heart that wasn't a phone booth with a red cape inside.
Love it.
Um, I do individual therapist consultations. I do small group therapist consultations. So if you know 3 or 4 therapists and you want to get a small group together, that's a great way to decrease price um, outside of just individual work. I have met with supervisors and their associates in a little group together to help kind of giving them some feedback and ideas. I'm currently working on a trans identified and or non-cis identified clinicians group on Wednesdays from 10 to 11:30 in May. There's 4 of those groups. Um, and check out my website. There's a lot of good information, a lot of good things to do. I also will do bigger trainings for agencies and group practices. So if that's interests you, I can build something out that's specifically designed for where you all are at. And I'm happy to do that anywhere in the country. I do a lot of my stuff remote and via telehealth.
Perfect. And I will link all the ways you can connect with Kieran below so you can see that and be able to more easily above or below wherever it is. Look, I'm an old dog learning new tricks. So if we're on YouTube, it's one direction, or podcast, it might be another. But anyway, just know that the link is going to be available. If you want to connect more with me in future podcasts, counselingcommunity.com, or you can find us on Facebook or Instagram, Counseling Community as well. We are here for you. We're all learning, we're all growing, and as helpers and healers, we're all in this together. So go out there and live your best dang life this week, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, Kieran.
Thanks, Jennifer.